All right, good morning, everybody, and thanks very much for joining us here on this Google Hangout. We're going to be discussing one of the most talked about, I'll refrain from using the word controversial, but one of the most talked about provisions of the recently cleared Companies Bill, which was just passed by the Rajya Sabha. It's taken 8 months between the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha, but the young Corporate Affairs Minister Sachin Pilot, who's joining us here on this Google Hangout, has managed to clear the Companies Bill through Parliament. Before I go any further and explain the provisions of this bill, there's a lot of confusion surrounding this particular CSR clause as well. But before I get to that, let me introduce all our panelists here on the Google Hangout. The Minister for Corporate Affairs, Sachin Pilot, joins us. Mr. Pilot, thanks very much for joining us. Also with us, Anand Mahindra, the Chairman and Managing Director of Mahindra & Mahindra, Aditya Puri, Managing Director and CEO of HDFC Bank, Rakesh Bharti Mittal, Vice Chairman of Bharti Enterprises, Rohit Adya, the Director External Affairs at Vodafone India, Geeta Dharmarajan, founder of Katha, Shrikant Prabhu, the student from IIM Bangalore and the head of a social initiative called Vikasna. We've got Abhishek Humbert and Richa Bajpai, the co-founders of NextGen. Lacey Carusa is the principal of charitable giving, google.org. So many thanks to all our panelists here this morning. Many thanks to the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, the Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs, Young Tech, NextGen, and of course Google for organizing this. So before I get started with the questions, let me very quickly take everybody through what the bill actually articulates and envisages as far as the CSR provision is called. It's been commonly called the CSR clause or the 2% clause. It's section 135 in the Companies Bill, and essentially it says that at least 2% of the average net profit of the company made during the 3 immediately preceding financial years shall be given towards corporate social responsibility. It's applicable to companies with a net worth of 500 crore rupees or a turnover of 1,000 crore rupees or a net profit of 5 crore rupees or more. The procedure is that the company will be asked to set up a CSR committee of 3 or more directors and at least 1 independent director. The committee will then recommend a CSR policy, and the amount that will be spent will be decided by the board, and the board will also monitor the company's CSR policy. We'll get through the various aspects of clause 135 in just a bit, but let me go across to Sachin Pilot. Mr. Pilot, let me start by asking you, because everyone is waiting now for the formulation of the rules. When you spoke with us some time ago, you said that you don't want to straitjacket corporate India into a CSR policy. You don't want there to be an Inspector Raj as far as the CSR provision is concerned. Are you going to align the rules to the voluntary guidelines that your ministry had already put out in 2011? There is, of course, SEBI guidelines as well, which is applicable to the 100 top listed companies, which is based on the national voluntary guidelines issued by the NCA. How is this rule formulation for the CSR provision in the Companies Bill going to work?
Okay. Well, first of all, there is nothing controversial about this bill. There is a provision of CSR, which is for the first time been introduced into the statute. And I think this has come about after many discussions over many years with a lot of stakeholders, including the corporate sector, consumers, government, NGOs, and everybody, including the Joint Parliamentary Committee of Parliament, came up with the view that we must have the CSR provision. But my intent, now that the bill has got its stamp of approval from the upper house also, my intent is really going to be to make sure that the provisions and the rule making for the CSR bill is done with practicality in mind. You mentioned about the SEBI's voluntary guidelines for the top 100 companies in India. Well, every company is different, so not every company will qualify for CSR, but the ones that do, we want to make it very open and very transparent in terms of what the companies can and should do. It's not the intent of the government to mandate what they should do. There will be a loose guideline as to the areas in which they can invest. The ultimate objective of the exercise, Shreen, is not really just to write a check and spend money. It's how you deploy those funds. What are the outcomes? Hopefully they'll be tangible to India themselves and to create a goodwill for the companies that are operating in the areas, to work in those communities. And I must add that the last 65 years since we've got independence, many of the corporates, in fact, a lot of the corporates have done seminal work in doing, community work, making schools, roads, hospitals, what have you. And that has really not been a new phenomenon in India. We are merely giving it a structured format so that we are able to use technology to be able to tell the shareholders and the entire world of the good work that companies are doing. So there is going to be self-reporting, self-disclosure. There will be no Inspector Raj, no government certification required. We leave it to the consciousness of the companies on the boards to make sure that they do the work that we expect them to do. And this is only for large companies that are profit-making companies that are going to be able to spend the 2% in the areas of their interest. Of course, there will be some guidelines that we'll put forward, but that too will be done with a lot of discussions and inputs from every single individual and companies that want to give their views in making this a reality.
The perception seems to be that the way that the government is approaching this issue of corporate social responsibility is as if it's something external to a company. So, this business is setting up a school or a hospital or investing in a road if possible. It almost seems to be as if this is something that's external to the company. It's not intricately linked to the very DNA, to the very workings of the corporate structure or the corporate entity. That's where the confusion stems from. For instance, there are several companies, I can give you a whole host of examples where people are working with the communities that they operate with. They're working with the larger stakeholders that they sort of deal with on a daily basis, and they're perhaps increasing crop yields, perhaps working on rural irrigation. Will those, because those are intricately linked to their business models and their business plans, will that now be treated as a business expense, or will that be treated as corporate social responsibility?
Maybe I gave wrong examples. It comes maybe I gave wrong examples by talking about schools and hospitals. That's very intuitive when you talk about CSR. But if a company wants to increase the productivity or the yield of a farming community, they want to give vocational training skills to the children of the employees. I think we leave it very, very open. I am not confining the ways in people should or can do CSR. They've been doing it for decades. In fact, we must use those best practices and examples that have yielded the best results, and they can do that, protecting the environment, the ecology. There are a billion things a company can do. As long as the board on that company, the CSR committee, approves that project, it's put up on the internet, people are able to see what are the tangible projects one is undertaking, and that will be a part of CSR. It is not for me to say this is or this is not CSR. It is up to the committee on the board to decide how they want to use the fund. And I want to add, Shireen, that this 2% of CSR spend that we are talking about, it is not a tax that the company has to pay to the government of India or to any other state government or agency. It is not a levy or a cess. This is primarily the company's money. We're only urging the companies to spend their own money in the areas that they feel most comfortable through the agencies that they are very familiar with. So they don't have to give the money to a government contractor or a PWD or a state department. They can use their trusts, their foundations, whatever they feel comfortable. And sometimes companies don't have the resources to deploy that CSR. So if a bank, for example, they don't have the wherewithal to go into the communities, they can do capacity building, they can do training, they can do workshops. There are n number of things a company can do as long as it passes muster of its own board's CSR committee. I think we as a government are okay with that.
One final question from me for now before I actually throw it open to our other participants, and that is really this issue, and once again this is a perception that there is likely to be misuse and especially political interference, that we're going to come back again to a cozy club situation. We're talking about a significant amount of money, and political parties or individuals in political parties will exert pressure on corporate entities to invest in particular constituencies, which may or may not have anything to do with their corporate interests or their particular stakeholders.
Okay, just for once, Shireen, if I can ask someone like you, who's a veteran journalist, to to discard some of the cynicism that is set in. Why must we always think of the negative things that can happen? Let's be positive about this. This is a leap of faith for this government and for our society. We are trusting our corporates to come forward and do the right thing. There are 100 things that can go wrong, and one cannot legislate for all eventualities.
Can we trust our politicians is the question.
Well, I think you also have to give credit to the policy making that we do sometimes. It is going to yield results. This is for our country. Let's not forget, the government, the politicians, and the corporate sector have a common agenda of making this country a developed one, to take it forward in this 21st century. So why must we be cynical about saying this will be used or can be misused? I am putting in all the checks and balances at my end to make sure there is absolute no misuse. There will be no pressure by government to do asking companies ki aap ye karo, aap wo karo. That's not the idea. It is for the company itself to decide what they want to do, and we're leaving it so open and transparent that I don't recall any legislation that we passed or any rules that we made in the previous years that has been so open and transparent. I am willing to take anybody's view on board. And let me also reiterate, I am one of those people who does not believe that the government or the minister is the repository of all wisdom. We are here to learn from experiences of others, inculcate those inputs, and try and come up with the best policy framework, and then work with trust with our corporates, including the media and our policymakers. Let's all work together to make an example in the world that communities, corporates, NGOs, governments, everybody can work together to discharge their responsibility towards our society and use those funds to make the lives of people better and better as we go on.
All right, thanks very much, Minister. I'll come back to you in just a second. Let me go across to our first participant, Mr. Mahendra. May I request you to first articulate, and I don't mean to be cynical here, and if this does work, and a lot of it will depend on the implementation of it, it could have transformative impact, but your apprehensions at this point in time, and any specific questions with regards to the formulations of rules that you may want the Minister to clarify?
Thanks, Shireen. First of all, I should say that I did struggle a great deal with this intellectually. Is this the role of government? Should they be legislating things like CSR? Does this contribute to an increasing intrusion in the ways in which companies will manage themselves? And I took myself back to my student days in the US when I was watching how the affirmative action program there was developing. I know the two are not strictly comparable, but I remember coming to the intellectual conclusion that however impractical it may have sounded, that the level of injustice done to a particular minority class in the US was so strong that you did need intervention by the government to come in and set direction and create more opportunity. And well, years later, you have a black president. No, I'm not drawing a conclusion that affirmative action led to that, but climate change in a metaphorical sense is what the government has to do and what I think Sachin and the government are doing here. So let me say I overcame my initial apprehensions, and I think this is the right step. As far as Mahendra is concerned, frankly, it was only aligning with our own new change in our core purpose, which is now RISE. And RISE really means about driving positive change in the communities that we work in. So we're trying, what Sachin is trying on a national level, we are doing at the corporate level, trying to say that everything we do, we need to find shared value for. Which brings me to the question that you want me to ask. And frankly, there are two. One is that, Sachin, we are defining shared value. And this is a term Michael Porter at Harvard Business School came up with a couple of years ago, where he said that, CSR is now passé. CSR is an outdated concept where you tick boxes to meet societal obligations or even governmental regulations. Businesses have to understand that the biggest commercial opportunities lie in enterprises which add value to communities. Now, I hope that's self-evident. I won't try and explain that more. But we are trying to do that. And to give one example, we've gone into rural housing finance, where it's a tough business, but we believe that we are doing well at the same time that you're doing good. It's a very powerful idea. But you have been quoted in a Times of India interview, and I don't blame you for this because you were trying to bring clarity at this stage, that anything that brings commercial profit will not fall under this. And I would submit to you that one of the biggest challenges is going to be how do you include the concept of shared value, where businesses like ours are creating social enterprises, as they call them, which do include profit. How will you include this in your CSR agenda?
Anand, I think you raised a very valid point about people having two views on whether this is the role of government or not. Frankly speaking, it's not for government to mandate how the company should spend their money. But you also made a point about shared values, and no company can exist in isolation. You sell products and services to the consumers who are citizens of this country. More importantly, you have manufacturing units which work in a community. You have a workforce that is coming from the areas in which you operate. Now, it is in interest of everybody, including government and the entrepreneur and the corporates, to make sure that there is, even if there's a perception of a trust deficit, we must mitigate that. When you make large profits, it's your hard-earned money, it's your capital, it's your idea, it is your efficiency that creates the profits. But to be able to share just a tiny bit of it in showing and endearing yourself to the people that you're working with. I mean, there are good companies, there are good politicians and bad politicians, there are good companies and not so good companies. So when you let companies use the money as CSR and then, they make profits out of it in whatever sense it is, then we come into a very gray area, that how do you delineate ones which are actually still doing business as usual and not really contributing the way that they should. I'm actually, not clear about how we will take up certain projects. This is a new idea. I think it's a little bit premature for all of us to, do the hair splitting about every nuance of how the CSR will play out. We will learn as we go along. We have just made the structure for what we think is a positive one, and this hasn't come about overnight. This has not been one idea of one bureaucrat or one politician. This has been debated for years together, and public sector companies are spending up to 5% of their profits as CSR. So it's obligatory in the sense that you must feel that you want to create a better society, a harmonious community of people where you are able to benefit from the improved lifestyle. If you have healthy, educated, trained people in the area that you operate, you help yourself getting a better labor force, a more qualified workforce, more productive workforce, happier, smiley faces that are going to reduce the deficit that perhaps exists in some areas between the corporates and the communities. So we'll cross the bridge when we come to it. But overall, just as a structure, this has been put out in the open. This is a new idea, it's a new initiative, and it'll only be successful if all of us work together. I'm happy and willing to be flexible in any way and form that all of you feel is appropriate for this to be a successful endeavor.
Ms. Farid, I can just take Mr. Mahendra's point forward because, also pick up on the point that you made about shared values and shared interest and the gray area that we will perhaps be falling into. And I don't believe that you have too much time to cross that bridge, because you will need to address this issue as soon as you get into the business of formulating rules as far as this particular clause is concerned. I come back to my point that there is an FMCG company that has a sanitation product, it runs a sanitation program around that, or there's a consumer goods company that is creating micro entrepreneurs through using people who are selling their products. Will that then fall under corporate social responsibility? It's adding to their income. It's bringing them a better quality of livelihood. It's perhaps helping educate their children. It is empowering them. Will that then be treated as business expense, or will it be treated as corporate social responsibility? Because that's the model that most companies today are taking and following.
Shireen, let's not confuse social entrepreneurship, doing work in areas where communities are benefiting from the business models and revenue generation. That's a whole separate ballgame. But I think you're giving me far too much credit and far too much power to decide what is right, what is wrong. We have said that the CSR committee on the board of the company, if it meets with their wisdom and requirement and they feel that this is CSR, so let it be. Let them put it up on the websites, let the people know, let the company shareholders know, let the consumers know. Who am I to dictate right or wrong? We are just making the provision for the companies to use the funds in the best way they think is the right way forward. And if the company feels that that's what is their CSR and the board meets with the approval, so be it. The people will be the judge, the areas in which they operate. Those people will then say, well, this is actually CSR and not CSR. So government is not the lord and master for every decision the companies make. Please don't make that mistake of saying that I will decide whether it's good or bad or right or wrong. We don't want to encourage any Inspector Raj or the government with a big stick standing on top of his shoulder saying, ye galat hai, ye sahi hai. I think the command and control economy structure is now way behind us, and we have to trust the companies in the work. And if the example you gave, it meets with the board's approval, so be it.
Okay, I'm going to get a quick response from Mr. Mahendra before I go across to Aditya Puri. Mr. Mahendra, a quick response to what you just heard from the Minister.
No, I'm very enthused by his comment about flexibility and about leaving it to the committees and the board. If that kind of latitude is given, then certainly I agree with Sachin. We don't have to wait for perfection before you start an initiative. He's trusting us. We will have I hope, enlightened people on our committee who will say, look, shared value is part of the agenda. We will put it in the annual report. We will put it out there for people to judge. My only concern, Sachin, is that hearing you, it's very, very refreshing. It's very rare to hear somebody talk about learning and about government not being the repository of all wisdom. I'm not sure how many of your peers share that outlook. So my concern is ye kissa kursi ka bhi hai. When you're not there, if somebody else doesn't share your viewpoint, are we going to be given the same flexibility? That's frankly petrifying. The thought is a little intimidating if somebody else is in your chair.
That's why Anand, you have to vote us back.
Yep, but we may not want you in that chair. We may want you in another portfolio, Sajid.
All right, it is Kissa Kursika, but let me go across very quickly and get to Mr. Aditya Puri. And Mr. Puri, go ahead with your question, sir. Mr. Puri, can you hear us? I think we seem to be having a connection problem there with Aditya Puri. I'll get to him just Ms. Puri, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can, sir. Mr. Mahendra just put on the table his apprehension about Kissa Kursika and what happens if a less flexible minister in place of Mr. Pilot. You want to put forward the concerns and apprehensions that you may have and also talk about solutions for the road ahead.
Yeah, I think we have to be realistic. You will have those ups and downs in a democracy, ministers will change, but if we stick to the fundamental issue that we are looking at community development and the role of people in community development and social responsibility. So we actually do, as of now in HDFC Bank, have a board approved program which reflects the passion of the board and the bank. Yes, it is linked to what we can do, but I think when it starts to get to be a profitable activity, we'll have to think of new issues. So will some of our activities that we're going to go into now, are they based on expanding our market? Yes. Are they going to make a loss for a few years? Yes. During that time, I think they will. And am I going to benefit not just myself and the company, but the community at large? That's the basis of our program. When this turns profitable, for instance, our sustainable livelihood, I think in 10 years is going to be worth a couple of $1 billion. But I'm going to make a whole lot of losses in 10 years. And when it turns profitable, I hope India will be a well-developed country and we don't need CSR to that extent. There may be different issues that come up. So actually, I don't have much concerns other than the fact that if the board has approved it, if it helps in bringing about change in the lives of the people that are marginalized, I think it's social responsibility. And we have plans there which embed this as a part of business responsibility. They have goals and we think we can measure them. Just to give you an idea, our sustainable livelihood, we've already brought 2 million families under it, under which we help them in terms of market linkages, in terms of training, in terms of finance to make them self-sufficient. We'll take this to 10 million. That's very measurable. We have clear plans in terms of substituting the money lender and bringing unorganized finance, which will make loss for a while. But one day I think somebody that succeeds me will thank me for doing a good turn for society and the bank, where we are taking all our products into the interior, whether it's loan against gold jewelry so that he can get it back, whether it's lending to the small shopkeeper, whether it's a two-wheeler, whether it's self-help groups. So I think it's a good initiative, and based on what we've approved in the board, I don't think anybody can argue with it being corporate social responsibility.
All right. Sachin, just to pick up on a point that Mr. Puri made over there, he said that perhaps in 10 years, what is now corporate social responsibility or a program in corporate social responsibility may perhaps turn into a profitable venture as well. What then, will the, and I don't know who's going to be around in the next 10 years, but what then will the rules sort of take into consideration something like this, where it started off as perhaps a corporate social responsibility venture, and then it turns profitable. If you continue to invest in that, will you still give it some sort of benefit? Will you account for it as CSR?
Wow, we haven't even started on the CSR, and we're looking at 10 years down the line whether things become profitable or not. I pray to God that it takes 8 years, not 10, for Mr. Puri's endeavors to become profitable. But I don't think we can sit on judgment today as to what might happen 10 years later. And right in the beginning, Mr. Puri gave me a reality check about ups and downs in politics and in democracies. Kursi jaati hai, kursi jaati hai. But the fact is that till the last minute that we are on this chair, it is our fundamental responsibility to do the best that we think today, in our judgment, is the best thing possible. History will judge whether this was a good or a successful initiative or not, whether it will fly or fall flat. Time will tell. But I don't think today we can talk about what things might shape out to be in 10 years' time. The objective is to start today with the positivity. And I think everyone, I mean, whoever has spoken so far has talked about, there are disenfranchised societies, there are underprivileged people in this country. And not for a second should anyone believe that the government is abdicating its responsibility. That government will not make schools and hospitals and roads and electricity and water, because that's what we anyway are doing. Idea is to supplement all of those efforts to make sure that the people of India believe that the corporates are not here just looking at bottom lines and quarterly profits and EBITDA margins. They're also concerned about, the situation in which people are living. It benefits everyone, and shared values, common objectives, having empathy and compassion for people who live around you. How can you have a successful factory making thousands of crores of profits, and the villages around those factories and units are people who are malnourished, who are starving? Sure, it's our responsibility as government and policymakers, but that supplementing of those efforts will create the kind of goodwill and intangible benefits for the companies that you can't even imagine. And it's not about having an affirmative action. That's something that's been prevalent in the West for some time. But in India, people have been criticizing, some not so much, some a lot, about this government's no one to tell her how to spend our money. Well, you're not giving the money to the government of India. This is your money. You spend it the way you feel like spending it. And it's not there for every company. It is only for large, established, profit-making entities which are in a position to contribute just 2% of what their profits are. So, let us evolve and see how things shape out in the future.
Okay, let me go across to Mr. Rakesh Bharti Mittal. Mr. Mittal, thanks very much for joining us. You run a fairly successful corporate foundation as well, which is in the education sector. You partnered with several state governments, etc. Share with us your experience. And, since we're not talking about closing education at this point in time, who would you like to take on board and take in terms of practical management on the ground?
Thank you, Shireen. First of all, let me share my view. I believe this is indeed a very welcome step, what has happened. And I must compliment the minister for really putting in a lot of efforts in making this reality today. I also believe that this just formalizes some of the work which the corporate India has been doing. But more importantly, this provision now will bring in more and more new companies into the fold, which inter alia would result into more funding available for many various projects across the country. Clearly, I think we will have to see once the rules are in place, and I can only say as a caution that we should bring as much transparency as is required when the rules are being framed, so that this is not open to any discretion for anyone to come and say that this is not right or that is not right. I also believe while many corporate houses have set up their own foundations through which they are doing their either philanthropic activities or the CSR activities, this bill has also made a provision that such funding which is given to the foundations will be taken care of as part of the CSR. But I think more importantly, one or two questions which I have. The first one is, I understand that somewhere it is said that the board of directors and the trustees of the foundation need to be different. And I don't know whether that's right or wrong, but if that is the case, then if we are saying that the corporates are going to set up their foundations, the promoters will most probably sit on both, on the board of the company as well as trust of the foundation trustees. Also, my understanding is that more emphasis is being laid upon that CSR spending by the Indian corporates should be done around the local areas where they are. My belief is that this is something which is a very restrictive clause, and the rules must specify that we can go and spend money wherever we want across India, because ultimately it is to go and impact the projects and the communities where the funding is required the most. Having said that, I absolutely concur with Sachin when he says that whatever will happen from the corporate India is only going to be complementary to what the efforts the government are putting in. And as a matter of fact, government spends the largest amount of CSR, all across the globe. So Bharti Foundation today, when I look at, we are running 254 village schools, and to my mind, that is where more and more money need to go. And I only wish that more corporates are inspired to look at going into with projects into the rural India, where the largest impact needs to be made, because I think that is where the inclusion is required. That is where we need to bring children to a level where they can partake in the economic growth of the country. And all in all, my also belief is that going forward, while there would be many sectors, the high focus areas would be education, healthcare, environment, water, and vocational training. Having said that, I can only make 2 points. One, I think corporate India must react very positively in complementing the efforts of the government. 2, there will be enough funding which will now be available. And my message to the NGOs would be they need to become more and more transparent to show that every rupee which is spent spent for the right purpose for which the money has come in. And I can also tell you where the foundation and NGOs were struggling today to get funding. Going forward in a transparent manner, they will now go and seek funds and will be made available, because every company doesn't have their own foundations to do what they need to do.
Sure, several important points that you've raised there, Mr. Mittal. Let me get the Minister to address some of them. Mr. Pilot, as far as this business of spending in and around local areas, the provision actually uses the word preferably. The companies to preferably spend in and around local areas. So if you can just clarify that for Mr. Mittal, and also about the issue of directors. My understanding is 3 or more directors, at least 1 independent director, will be part of that CSR committee. So if you want to just address those 2 points.
Yes, I think the bill clearly states that the companies should endeavor to preferably spend the money in the area of operation, because if you're not a service company or a manufacturing company, then the focus of attention is in the area that you are having a unit. So it's something that is suggestive. It's not mandatory at all. In fact, there are companies that are doing trading, for example. They have no areas of operation, so they'll have to spend money somewhere. So you're right, Mr. Mittal, that you should actually try and, for a service company certainly, spend the money where it's most needed. And education certainly should be right at the top of these things. It's not just making schools and creating structures, but to be able to infuse quality education, skill upgrading. We have such a huge deficit in upgrading of our skills. You can't find good people who can operate on the shop floor. That kind of skill building, vocational training is certainly something very, very important. And I'm quite happy to hear that your foundation has done work in the previous years. About the CSR committee, it has to have 1 director who's independent on the board. And I'm not clear as to whether we've decided about the individuals could be same or different. I think it's a matter of detail. Ultimately, what the people want to see is the money being given to the trust or the foundation, so that work is done. It's who delivers the money and what is the platform is not important. What's more important is the actual, ground on which the projects are to be delivered. So we'll sort out these issues as and when we move along. But I can only assure you that any of the suggestions that you made in this event today or later on will certainly get the highest consideration from our end.
Okay, thanks very much. Let's go across to Rohit Adya, the Director External Affairs at Vodafone in India. Rohit, companies like yours, global companies who are operating in India, are obviously thinking about how this actually aligns with your global initiatives, what this will actually mean in terms of global compliance for companies like Vodafone. What are your thoughts on this and your concerns?
Thank you, Shireen. First of all, congratulations, Minister, on the bill. And for Vodafone in India, sustainability has been a journey, and it's not an objective. And we believe what is good for the society is good for the business. In the period of last 5 years, Vodafone has rolled out several initiatives on CSR, specifically women empowerment and infant mortality and mobile for good. And our engagement with mobile, m-commerce, m-banking, m-health, and m-education has been the pioneers, where we have constituted awards and have supported more than about 50 NGOs in this venture. Okay. My question to you, Minister Sir, is that in the country fraught with the social sector, challenges which are new policy allowing public-private partnership, because in these crucial areas, shared development and goals like women's empowerment or digital empowerment in the rural sector, or M-banking, say, for supporting Narega, where we've launched a new product like M-Pesa, would really go a long way. Your views on this, Minister?
Well, I think your company has done some work that you outlined just now, and I'm quite well aware of the M-Pesa scheme. It started off in Africa, and it's done a lot of work in terms of empowering people with the banking facilities and the credit facilities which they never had, and I'm sure your company is doing good work on that. I'm not really clear as to whether this is a business model that has got as a business development initiative of the company, or you're doing this just to make sure that people are connected, are having access to credit and banks. It depends again on the CSR committee that your board forms, and if you and your board and the independent director on the committee is convinced that this is really adding value to sustainable development for the area, well, so be it. Like I said, if it's done to enhance your own bottom lines and as a business initiative, because ultimately every company wants to expand. So if I want to sell to more people in more areas, if I say I'm reaching to more people and this is a CSR activity, well, then that gray area still exists, because business development primarily means that you enhance your consumer base, you enhance your revenue models, and you go out and tap new markets. That's business development. But on the ground, the impact of it, the feedback from the people and your board itself, if it feels that this is what you really believe is the CSR initiative of the company, well, then we'll have to.
But if I may, Mr. Pilot, why is that a gray area? I mean, if you have a company that is trying to expand its market, at the end of the day, it's going to benefit its shareholders. It will benefit the larger stakeholders of the company. It will ensure that the bankers to that company get paid on time. There are no defaults. It will ensure that you actually have a healthy company. A healthy company will lead to a healthier economy. Why should there be a gray area there?
Well, then I think let's do one thing, Shreen. Let's make it 98% CSR and let the 2% be the profits. If regular business activity you think is compliant with CSR, then there is no reason for us to have a responsible corporate, putting money into where it is not going to make commercial returns.
I want to come back again.
Let me finish.
Okay.
So for a company to go out and sell, FMCG products or insurance or, opening bank branches, sure, it's empowering people. People are getting added benefits, added facilities. It's improving their lifestyles. It's getting them more incomes. But for the company as a core value, is it doing it primarily to enhance markets and make more profit, or is it doing it because there is a need and dearth of money to be deployed to help those people fight disease and malnutrition and hunger and poverty? That decision is up to the board, and that's why I said it's gray area, not for me. It's gray area for the CSR committee on its board, because they'll have to declare on their website that this is what we've done. We spent 5 rupees, but we made 7 out of it. We think it's CSR activity. I hope the shareholders approve. And then we'll see what happens. I mean, this is not great for me. It's probably great for the company itself.
All right, fair enough. Let's go across to Geeta Dharmarajan, the founder of Katha. With Dharmarajan, for the social sector, suddenly you are going to have to deal with creating this absorptive capacity and trying to figure out a delivery mechanism that actually works to be able to do this efficiently. Your thoughts on what the government is hoping to do?
I think it's a huge historic moment in the development trajectory of the country, and I do compliment the government and Mr. Pilot on this movement. I think it is uncommon learnings for a common good, and all of us have to learn across, from government to the corporate sector to the non-profits. I think we are learning for the world. We are not able to learn from the world because nobody else seems to have done it before. But I think that when we are looking at how do we absorb this money, or how do we use this money very transparently and very responsibly, I think we need to have checks and balances, as the minister has been saying, but we also need to look at the ways in which the money is being spent. When we look at, for instance, the corporate sector, they are going to be making money over a long period of time. They've thought about it. They have contemplated what they need to be using the money to make their products. And then they have to spend it on in 1 year in their CSR activities. Now that period is going to put a lot of strain on all of us, because it has to be made, the decisions have to be made transparently and with accountability. And we need to see that there is a shared value coming from this free capital, which is flowing into the market. It can be used by government, by the corporate, and by the non-profit in different ways. When I look at Katha and I look at, how can this demand be generated? I know, for instance, we are working in 220 slums in Delhi, and we work in Arunachal Pradesh. And I know that there are these children and these young people, gritty young people, who want to make a change in their lives. And with capital coming into it, they can make a difference. And we can all make a difference in the lives of the people who are coming in. My main question would be, what is the shared value we'll be creating? What kind of roles will non-profits be asked and allowed to play? What kind of trust can we build for non-profits? Because I think we have a very low trust deficit at this point of time.
All right. Mr. Pilot, go ahead.
Well, I think she's absolutely right, because I think it's much easier to give money. It's much more tougher to actually use that money for the good purpose that it was intended for. And these are the legs you need to go out to the field to solicit the problem and then kind of address it. So you'll have to create this this sort of communication. And we as government are only trying to, in some way or form, facilitate that, because there are companies who don't know where to put the money or have no knowledge or information. And there are good NGOs or non-profits who are doing good work in those areas. So we are trying to create a database where you can put people in touch with each other. There are 600 districts in India, and there are always projects that are short of funds. So, and I'll give you an example. A company is making floor tiles or furniture. Another company is making hardware, electronics, televisions or screens. Another company has an HR firm. And if they all put together, the infrastructure, the electronics, and the human resource, they can create a good vocational training center, skill building center for girls and boys, young adults. And that has much more value than just donating money to, put tiles and, paint a building. So we'll have to get many people together, give them the option of using some of these NGOs and non-profits who are, doing good work, and then make that connect. It's easier said than done. And I understand the complexities and the kind of trust that you have to create. And at no point, again, let me reiterate, I as member of the government or the minister should not be saying and telling NGOs ki aap inse paisa lo, aap inko paisa lo. That's not my job. My job is to try and create a pan-India network or something on the internet where people can tap into it, but click of a button and see the projects that are pending in these areas and the funds required. And some of these NGOs can be used as the executing bodies to deliver that money. So this will take time. This is the new baby. I mean, we'll have to really work hard at making, and connecting all the dots. But I'm confident that with with the intention that I've seen, at least we'll be able to make a success out of it.
A quick follow-up from my side. Are you looking? You said you're looking at creating a database, but are you also looking at creating perhaps a rating system of a sort? A corporate who has his cash now has to work on deploying it, know who he should go to, and if there's a transparent rating mechanism that he can access, and he knows which of the social sector organizations that he should perhaps be looking at.
That's true. Well, there are, like I said, there are good politicians, bad politicians, good companies, not so good companies, and there are good NGOs and not so good NGOs. So, I don't want to get into the concept of rating, etc. But yes, if it's a registered organization which has done some work, has some credibility, somebody can vouch for it, I'm happy to include those people as part of my endeavor to create a database. The ultimate decision is not mine; it's the companies who they want to choose to give those monies to deploy it. But we'll have to have some trust amongst each other. I hope that I can also rope in some of the district collectors who have pending projects and are short of funds in most states, irrespective of which ruling dispensation is in power. These collectors and district organizing officers, medical officers will tell you, well, we need an X-ray machine in this hospital in Jharkhand or in Kashmir or in Kerala. Whatever's missing, I mean, people have to know what's lacking, and I'm sure Corporate India will be more than happy to come forward and step in and supplement those efforts.
Okay, we're running out of time, so very quickly, Srikanth Kapoor, student from IIM Bangalore, also runs Vikasna. Srikanth, go ahead.
Yeah. Hi. Good morning, Mr. Pilot. This is Srikanth. So my question to you is, speaking of positivity that you mentioned, and kudos to your government that you got the bill through, the upper house. So speaking of positivity, and I wanted your thoughts on opportunities to youth because of, the whole CSR initiative. The big companies investing in CSR activities. So what role do you see the youth, especially students like, institutes like IMB, what role do you see them playing in, execution as such in general of the CSR initiatives of various companies?
Okay. Pilot?
Thanks. Well, I think it's true. It's getting anything through in Parliament these days is not easy, let alone a bill that's been pending for a decade. So I'm glad we got that done. And I've already thanked all the political parties who gave support for endorsing this bill. As far as institutions are concerned, every institute has a role to play. And I'm hoping through the Ministry of Corporate Affairs to link up with some of these institutions, whether it's the IITs or IIMs, because some of the work that is happening within the faculty or the student community is really, really interesting. And again, we'll try and link you up with some of the NGOs and see how you can contribute to their efforts, giving them those ideas to reach those, problem areas, the last mile connectivity, and academic institutions, the NGOs, non-profit, the corporate sector, and very, very far behind the government. I think if all of us move together, and young people are the strength of our country, the bedrock of our faith that we have in the next few decades. And if we not empower these young people with the kind of skill sets they need to take on the 21st century challenges, because you have to compete not just with people within India, but you have to compete globally. And how do you get that encouragement and support systems? How do you put money into research and development? How do you create incubation centers? How do you develop technologies that are going to empower you and your future generations?
Yeah.
These issues are very, very important. And I'm sure part of the CSR capital that will be let out in India will be diverted towards that.
Well, on that point, let me also bring in Abhishek Humbad and Richa Bajpai, two young entrepreneurs. Go ahead with your question. You'll have to unmute. We can't hear you. Abhishek, Richa.
Yeah, so, hello, can you hear us?
Yes, loud and clear now.
Yes, we can.
Great. So first of all, we'd like to congratulate the minister, and we have this perspective that CSR investment in incubation centers is supposed to be a CSR activity for corporate. So we believe that it will change the entrepreneurial landscape in the country. So what is the expectations from the entrepreneurial community and the youth in India?
Well, this particular aspect actually was the initiative of the finance minister. To be honest, he in fact suggested that we must allow some of the CSR funding to go into incubation centers, because there's a big crunch in terms of funding for these incubation centers and developing technologies, especially in the government-aided bodies and accredited institutions which are doing this work. So this will go forward. Unless we do R&D, unless we have moved up the value chain in terms of creating assets for our country. How long will India just be a data processing center? How much data entry can our young people do? And more services, when they become commoditized, you have much more competition on labor cost, and the margins fall down. So you move up the value chain, and the only way to do that is to develop more technologies, to have a niche products and services, and that will only happen if you are able to have incubation centers like the one that we think will come to the fore with some of the funding that we might get from CSR. So I have great hopes, because it's for young people to get those entrepreneurial initiatives from us. And just to add one line, in the bill we have a concept of 1-person company. So up until now in India, you need 2 people to start a company and minimum 1 lakh rupees. With the 1-person company concept, this is a brand new idea where small artisans, weavers, farmers, people who do work with their hands, they will get the legal sanctity of a corporation, get access to credit in banks without being just individuals. And also limit their liability. So we're making compliances and reporting much, much less for a 1-person company, so that we're able to hopefully bring tens of millions of our artisans and workers and people who work for themselves into the corporate world, so that they become a legal entity. And that, I think, is something, again, is hopefully going to push entrepreneurship in our country in a big way.
On that point where you said the finance minister was the one who actually recommended some of the CSR proceeds go into incubators, etc., perhaps you can ask him to simplify how we tax angel capital and venture capital going into these startups as well, because that's been a bugbear since the last budget. But let me get Lacey Caruso, Principal Charitable Giving at google.org to join in. Lacey, go ahead.
Thank you, Shireen, and congratulations, Minister, on this bill passing in Parliament. As we've discussed, I think it's a very interesting initiative and unprecedented. It's the first time a government has ever taken a step like this. And as a global company that Google is, we'll be interested to see what the ramifications are and the impacts of this are in India. So I just wanted to share a couple of thoughts about Google's approach to CSR that I think might be relevant to the conversation. The first is that, and this echoes the thoughts of some others on this call, is that doing good is an integral part of who Google is as a company and our culture. And we don't treat CSR as just another function, but it's spread across the company, across all of our products and our people. And it's actually one of the things that I love most about working there is the encouragement and freedom that employees have to do good things. And I think, specifically we think about our approach to CSR in 3 big areas. First is in our grant making. The second is in providing our technology and products to nonprofits for free or discounted rates. And the third is getting our people involved, so connecting Googlers to the nonprofits in their communities and working with them directly on the ground. And so in that sense, I think flexibility that we've talked about will be really important in this CSR law. And the second point I wanted to make was we're firm believers in the idea that CSR doesn't need to be boring. And I think, you know, on the contrary, it can actually be very inventive and creative. And as an example, just this week, we actually launched the Google Impact Challenge in India, inviting nonprofits from across the country to tell us their ideas on using technology for addressing challenges in India and also at a global scale. And the top 4 submissions will receive a $500,000 grant from Google and technical support from Googlers to make their projects a reality. And we're really excited about that and think it's great to support the nonprofit sector in that way, and it's a great way to crowdsource ideas. We're going to involve the public in helping us select one of those organizations to win one of those awards. So I think the point there is that I think the new law could be an opportunity to sort of bring the concept of CSR forward and think a bit more creatively about it. And so finally, just to close, a question for you, Minister, is talk a little bit about what impact you expect to see as a result of this law over the next few years, and how do you see CSR evolving in India as a result?
Thank you for your comments. I think it's very true. CSR does not have to be boring. I think it has to, A, be fulfilling. It has to be something that people really want to do, and once the companies put their minds and efforts behind something, then I'm sure the money will be of much more use than just merely writing up a check. I think the CSR initiatives in India are not new, and I've said this before. For the last 6 decades, Indian corporates have done great work in creating communities, giving back to the people who are working in those areas. So this is just not a new concept, but as a legislation, as perhaps a structured format, yes, it's true that there's more disclosure. We have technology, we have internet, websites, mobile phones now, so people are much more aware of all the good work that companies are doing. There's nothing new, but I hope that we are able to get a lot of money into communities, because then people can see with their own eyes, that companies have actually taken the pains to see what is missing, what is required, and to supplement the efforts of developing those communities. And responsible corporate behavior is, I think, very, very important. Sustainability, as somebody mentioned earlier about harmonious coexistence. In the times that we live today, the kinds of conflict, the kinds of trust deficit, the kinds of suspicion one has, especially in challenging times, those are the times where we need to soothe the nerves, take people along, create the kind of confidence that is required to trust each other, whether it's employees, workers, shareholders, NGOs, government employees, whoever they are. Get everyone to work together as a community. And the ownership of CSR is not of the governments or just of the corporate sector. It is a country, as a society. We have taken up this challenge. We've been able to, through the parliament, spoken as the voice of people. And I hope that this will meet with very, very positive results. And like you said, in the end, it should be fun as well. So people should have those kind of competitions, encourage young people, and target them as something that we want to invest in.
Well, we're out of time, but before I let you go, Minister, you said that the bill took almost a decade in the making. How long are the rules going to take to be formalized? Because, I tried to pin you down on a timeline before. You haven't given us one, but how long do you envisage this business of public consultation to take, and by when can we actually see the explicit rules?
It's not really for me to give you timelines because I think we waited long enough, and we have a rulemaking committee within the ministry, which has, by the way, members from various chambers of commerce, legal experts, accountants, auditors, NGOs, and I think we only have 2 or 3 members of the government who are part of the CSR rulemaking committee. And soon enough, very soon, we'll have the rules on the internet for people to comment and give suggestions, and we'll try and take on board as many as possible, as many as practically possible, and to make sure that the CSR rules are not just palatable but encouraging. One is to arm twist people and to slap them around and make them do things. The other way is actually encourage them, show them that this is the right way, and then get them on board to be able to fulfill their obligations. I'm quite hopeful, and I think despite what you said in the middle of the program about being cynical and being pessimistic, I'm far removed from that. I'm still positive. I'm very confident. I have great faith in the Indian corporate sector, in our people as a country, as Indians. As we finish 65 years of our independence, we must move forward with our heads held high and more confidence in the future. And together we can rebuild this country and to make it a great nation.
I don't think anybody is going to quarrel with that thought or that idea, Sachin Pilot. I think the consensus on this panel is, and I think I speak for everybody here, the idea really is to try not to look at CSR with a very narrow, short-sighted approach. The idea would be, as the Ministry of Corporate Affairs itself, when it formulated the National Voluntary Guidelines, it replaced CSR with the term responsible business, because the expectation really is that you harmonize the financial performance of a company with the expectations of society at large. The triple bottom line approach is what we hope that the government will encourage, as opposed to this very narrow approach of CSR that one hopes will not be the road ahead. And we do hope that, as you pointed out, there will be enough and plenty of flexibility given to corporate India and to the social sector to try and implement the guidelines that you put out. But many, many thanks to all of our panelists, Anand Mahendra, Aditya Puri, Rakesh Bharti Mittal, Rohit Adya, Geeta Dharmarajan, Shrikant Prabhu, Abhishek and Richa, and Lacey. Thanks very much for joining us here on this Google Hangout. Minister, thanks very much. Indeed, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much.